Hi, I'm Christina, and this is Desert Agave Fiber Arts. I'm a Latinx, fat, bipolar writer and fiber artist with PTSD. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I grew up in Wisconsin and have lived in New Mexico since 1998. I've been a writer since forever, and I've been exploring the fiber arts since 2021. Exploring my creativity through the fiber arts has reinvigorated my writing and led me away from trauma and depression and towards joy. In this podcast, I'll primarily discuss knitting, spinning, wool processing, sewing, embroidery, and often mental health. I'm not an expert in any of these, but the process of discovery, experimentation, and wild leaps into the dark bring me joy, and I hope to share that with you. So first of all, I really meant to be one of those podcasters who posts like clockwork on a schedule that they've determined. And I had decided my schedule was going to be every 2 weeks. I thought that was a good balance. And I think it's been more like 5 weeks since my last podcast. So that didn't work out. Basically, life and then my mental health's reaction to life kept getting in the way. And then right when I thought maybe I was ready to podcast, I got a really bad cold and I was sick for a week and was drippy and gross and could barely talk. And it's just now is when I could do it. So I guess as much as I would love to be one of those podcasters who posts on a really regular schedule that you can rely on, I'm going to have to be one of those ones who posts when they can. And hopefully when you see them come up in your feed, you go, hey, it's her or him or they. You say, hey, I really miss that person. I hope so. I hope there's at least a few of you that feel that way. But yeah, I just can't be one of those people who posts every week or every 2 weeks. I wish I were, and those people delight me. I'm glad they exist. Anyway, one other thing that's been going on in addition to sort of life things within my little sphere is my PTSD has definitely been really triggered lately, both by things going on in my personal sphere and by the election. I think just about everyone I know who has issues along the lines of PTSD or anxiety or things like that has been really triggered by the election, because the idea of impending fascism is terrifying. And that's definitely been affecting me, and I feel like it's been affecting everyone I know. I keep having the same conversation over and over again where someone says, I feel like I feel terrible right now, and everyone I know feels terrible, and I don't understand why. And I say, it's the election. It's scary. I've already voted. I've written postcards. I've donated. Got signs up in my yard for Kamala Harris. And I really hope that you and your loved ones have voted too, or have solid concrete plans to vote. That's all I'll say about that, but I can't let it go unacknowledged because it's just a huge thing going on right now with anyone here in the United States. All right. Next, finished object story time is what I like to call it. First thing I'll point out is this cardigan. This cardigan is the first garment that I ever made. I started it about 6 weeks after I started knitting, about, I guess, 1.75 years ago now. And I worked on it from about February of that year to, I think I finished it in May, right when it got hot. So I didn't get to actually wear it for quite a while. But, it's a funny thing, because soon after I started working on it, I discovered some things about the company that the yarn came from that I really didn't like, and the pattern was one published by that company. So I don't like to share the name of the yarn or the pattern on social media for that reason. I just don't feel like giving them advertising. But so I had those reservations about this cardigan, but I kept working on it. I also made a gazillion mistakes. There's this nice textured panel, and on various parts of it, I just sort of lost the plot and got the texture wrong. So there's chunks where the texture is funny. There's other spots where there's random holes because I picked it up midway through a row and forgot which direction I was going in reverse directions. I mean, it's very much the work of a beginner. It's also just a very simple cardigan. There's no room for my neck back here, so it sort of slides backwards a lot. and because it's just a bunch of rectangles put together. Despite all of these things about it, I wear this cardigan a lot and I enjoy wearing it. It brings me joy. I guess it reminds me that things don't have to be perfect to bring you joy, and that is a good thing to be reminded of. I don't normally wear a beret inside, just so you know, but I thought I'd wear it for this podcast. I was wearing it on my morning walk with my husband and my dog this morning, and I decided to keep it on. And this is Sari Nordland's, I think it's the Cura beret. It's my first successful all-over lace project, and I really like wearing it. It's cold enough now that in the mornings I can wear it, and it's been making me happy. New glasses too. Everyone who sees me for the first time in a couple weeks exclaims about them, so I guess they're pretty noticeable. It's funny actually, I bought these frames. They're from zenny.com, and I bought them as sunglasses a few months ago because my eye doctor said I should start wearing sunglasses when I'm outside. And I've never really liked wearing sunglasses, but I thought, well, if I'm gonna wear sunglasses, I'm gonna get the biggest, most obnoxious frames I can possibly find for them. So that's what I did, and I started wearing them as sunglasses. And every time I saw a picture or I saw myself in the mirror, I was like, you know what? I actually really like those. And finally, I broke down and I got myself another pair as regular glasses, and I'm really enjoying the heck out of them. And I've been getting a ton of compliments on them, so at the very least, people notice that there's something a little different going on here. I've always worn kind of unassuming glasses before, so it's pretty fun to just have a big old pair of square green glasses. All right, I have other things I have finished since the last time we talked. First of all, a lot of mitts. Let's see. I finished a couple pairs of fingerless mitts. First of all, these are the ones that are a gift for the artist who made my logo for this channel. They're all done. They do need to be blocked, although all the ends have been woven in. I'm gonna block them today. I've been putting it off just because I keep forgetting, but I'm gonna do it today as soon as I'm done recording, because I wanna try to give them to him as soon as possible, because it's actually starting to get cold enough to wear them. Really pleased with how they turned out. They are, I'll put the pattern below because I'm blanking right now on what they are. Oh, they're the Rodin mitts by Isolde Teague using Rama brand yarn, and I love them. Might eventually make myself a pair in brown in a slightly smaller size. I also, last time, I showed you some mitts I had made as a test knit, and I finished them. I had only made one. Now I've made the second, and I have worn them for the past week or two. I've been wearing them on the chilly mornings, really loving them. They feel luxurious. I love the color. I love how they don't exactly match the hat, but they sort of go with. They have this beautiful twisted rib pattern. These are the Alma's mitts, designed by Kavitha Rahman, and really nice pattern. It came out about a month ago. If you want a pair of mitts, I highly recommend it. It's written for DK weight yarn. You can either use DK yarn or you can do what I did, which is to use fingering weight plus mohair. I think one of the things that's fun about the mohair is that it seems sort of luxurious and silly, but mohair is actually really, really tough. So it's actually a great choice for mitts, I feel, because it should keep them from pilling and such. Unfortunately, the toughness of mohair only goes so far. I had a tragedy with these mitts just yesterday. I left them in my purse, and I left my purse on the floor, and my dog, I haven't mentioned I have a dog, but I do, he got a hold of them, and my son looked over and saw my dog with the mitts and went and rescued them, but he rescued them after my dog had managed to chew a hole in my beautiful mitts. Luckily, I know how to darn, so I'm definitely going to be fixing up these mitts. You know, I have enough yarn, I could probably even make a whole another, mitt, but I'm gonna try darning it first. It will mess up the beautiful twisted rib pattern a little bit, but I think I can get it looking good. And, it's kind of more of that still finding joy in things that have imperfections, which is just sort of a good life lesson to learn, I guess. But yeah, keep your mitts away from your dogs. Okay, let's see. Also, you have never seen these because I made them in about 10 days, and I literally just finished them yesterday. I made a pair of DK weight socks. Really like them. I've made DK weight socks before. I love how fast they knit up. However, one thing that has always been an issue for me before is that they don't fit me that well. I've tried a couple different patterns, and no matter what I do, they just, I don't know, they feel like wearing bags on my feet. Cozy bags, but bags. This recipe, it's not a pattern, it's a recipe, provided me with the best fit that I have gotten yet for DK weight socks. It's basically perfect. I might try next time I make it, making them slightly narrower, just like by one increase round, and see how that is, but they're really great this way too. It's a recipe by Ms. Evil Knits. I believe it's called they're called the Cura socks. I'll put a link below. I'm sorry I don't have the exact name in front of me. It's actually a recipe intended for making socks with unspun yarn, which I also plan to do, more on that later. But I thought, she says in the recipe that these can be made in any yarn for any feet. And I thought, well, then I'm gonna use some different yarn from my stash and just see how I like the recipe. And I really like it. I am absolutely making another pair super quick, especially because I have a fair amount of DK weight yarn as well as unspun. And I like that I can knit these up in 10 days. Fingering weight socks always take me at least a month, often longer. And I really feel like I need socks right now. It's cold enough for socks, and I don't like wearing anything other than my own hand knit wool socks. And I don't have that many pairs right now. I didn't count before recording this podcast, but I think I have maybe 5 pairs that work well enough to wear them at this point. And that's really not enough if you want to wear wool socks every day. So I need more, and I'm really happy that as of today, I've got a new pair, yay. I don't have this to show off, but another thing that I worked on that I consider a finished object is mending. Both my husband and my son have house socks that I knit for them that they wear around like slippers. And they both wore them every day last winter. And by the end of the winter, their socks had big old holes in them. And I sat down and I mended them using darning. Basically, it was like weaving. It was super fun. You basically like weave a little square over the hole using yarn. It can be contrasting yarn. It can be the same yarn. And then you have a patched up sock, and both of them are back to wearing their socks again. They're really happy that the holes are gone. And I just feel good every time I see it, knowing that the effort I went to make them that gift to keep their feet warm isn't over just because they got a hole in them after one winter. They're ready for another winter, and I can mend them again. It's just cool. All right, let's go on to works in progress. So I'm trying to think what order to go in. I think I'm going to share this because one thing that happened a week or two before October started was I had no intention of doing the Stephen West mystery knit along with the shawl. Last year I intended to do it. I even bought yarn for it, and then I ended up getting distracted and I never even started it. And then there was the whole kerfuffle about the pattern, and that made me even less likely to want to start it. So this year I had no intention of participating, but then I watched a podcast. I will link the podcast below. It's super fun. Let's see, what is it called? It's called Trivial Knits. I don't remember the name of the woman who hosts it, but it's Trivial Knits. And she calls herself a Stephen West superfan, and she had an episode where she talked about the previous MKALs and tips for doing the MKALs, and by the end of it, I really wanted to do it, so I did. And it's kind of funny, but I feel like it was wildly successful, even though it is not one of my finished objects. But the first thing I decided when I decided I wanted to do the MKAL in September is I said, you are not allowed to spend money on this, Christina. I've been trying hard not to buy more yarn because I have a ridiculous amount of yarn for someone who's been knitting for less than 2 years. And also last year I had bought the yarn and then not used it. So I said, this year you can do it, but you have to use stash yarn. And that was a little tricky because you needed 2 skeins of fingering weight in 2 different colors. I have a ton of fingering weight yarn. Very little of it do I have 2 skeins of the same yarn. I've got individual skeins that I plan to make a sock or something out of eventually. But I poked around and I eventually found that I had some Pearl Soho linen quill in a bunch of different colors. This neon green, this more sedate green. I also have it in pink. You can't really see, but there's a bulletin board behind me and it's got swatches hanging off of it. And some of them are the swatches that I did trying to decide which colors of linen quill to use together. And I eventually decided on these two greens. I wasn't sure about it. I bought a sweaters or a t-shirts quantity of this green yarn at some point on sale, which was really kind of funny of me because I can be pretty adventurous, but I don't actually think I'm a neon green knitted t-shirt kind of a lady. So I have 4 skeins of it, which is a lot. And I was just like, I feel like maybe I'll use some of it for a contrast stripe at some point, but I'm not going to knit myself an entire tee out of this color. And then after a lot of debate, I decided that this was its best pair. And then the first week's clue came out and I was sick that week. So I was basically laid up in bed. And what I did all week was I worked on the clue. I feel like the MKAL's over, so I'm not going to give a spoiler warning. This is week 1. Surely you've seen week 1 by now. So this is it. I did the whole thing. It was super duper fun. I mean, not only was it fun, but it made me laugh. Like the whole time I was working on it, I was like, this thing is amazingly weird and it's genius and I love it. I really, really had a good time making this. And here's the part that's funny, but also the part that makes me feel like this was successful, which is that I finished the clue for week 1. I looked at the clue for week 2, which I liked. I thought it looked cool. I was in no way disappointed by it. The whole shawl is super cool and I would love to have one and wear one. But what I thought to myself after week 1, as I was looking into starting week 2, was basically, I thought, this is amazing. I was feeling a little burned out on all of my making, not just knitting, but everything, spinning, sewing, writing. And I thought, I don't feel burned out anymore. I feel energized. That was pure play last week, and a week of just playing a lot felt amazing, and I was filled with all this creative energy, and I realized I don't want to use that creative energy on finishing this really cool, fun shawl. I want to use it on my other works in progress. I want to get some stuff done. And at first I thought about it because I was like, well, oh look, some of the stitches are coming off. Anyway, I thought, well, shouldn't you finish it? And then I just thought, you know what? This is my creative practice. I get to do what I like. There's no one making rules. Stephen West isn't going to be disappointed because I didn't finish his shawl in the month of October. So I put this aside and I've been working on other things, mostly my works in progress ever since. And I've been doing it joyfully, with a sense of fun and adventure that I hadn't had for a while. So super grateful to this MKAL. I plan to keep it tucked away somewhere, ready for the next time I need a week of play, and maybe I'll eventually get it done at whatever pace is right for me. Okay. So, what did I start working on once this was done? Well, first of all, I went back yet again to Who Can Stay, the One Wild design by Jennifer Paracino. I might be saying her last name wrong, I'm sorry. I shouldn't even say it wrong because she's a friend. Anyway, I went back to it and I decided I was going to keep working on it for my husband, and I have gotten super duper far. My goal, I decided, was to get it done by the end of October. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think I can get it done by the end of this weekend, so I think I can get it done in the first few days of November, and that is close enough. So I did a whole sleeve. Then I decided, in order to know if it was the right length or not before I made the second sleeve, I should really do the collar. So I did the collar, and it's not perfect, but I'm super proud of it. It's my first ever sort of double folded over collar. I love how it looks. It fits my husband really, really well. And then I started on the second sleeve and I panicked. I was right at the very beginning of it doing the short rows to do the sleeve cap, and I suddenly thought, oh no, I'm doing it wrong. I'm doing it differently than I did this sleeve. And I was like, oh no, this sweater's gonna look ridiculous if I do the 2 sleeves 2 different ways. I made a mistake. I either made a mistake now or I made a mistake then, and I'm gonna have to totally redo the sleeve. I have to look at the pattern and I have to look at my piece and I have to figure out what's going on. So I thought this, and then I put it away, and I said, I will take this out tomorrow morning, and I will look at it, and I will figure out what's going on with the sweater. And then I kept it away for a week. I kept knitting during that week. I made some other things that I'll talk about, but it sat there in its beautiful project bag thinking about what it had done. And finally, after about a week, I got it back out again. I looked at the pattern carefully. I looked at my knitting carefully, and I concluded that at 9 at night, the week before, I had panicked over nothing, and I had not made a mistake on this sleeve. I was not making a mistake on this sleeve. I could just keep working. And I've been working on it ever since. That was just this week. I haven't gotten super far, but I've gotten through the short rows. I'm working on it in the round. I'm working on the decreases. Like I said, it's not going to be done by the end of tomorrow. Who are we kidding? But I think it'll be done by Sunday night. That would be super cool. It's cold enough for him to wear this in the mornings or in the evenings when watching TV and chilling out, and I would really love that. It's a beautiful sweater, and it's just perfect for him. So yay. And like I said, I've been having fun again with it. I wasn't having fun with anything for a while, and I've been having fun with this. Speaking of not having fun, though, I'm going to take you back to something I was working on before I started working on the Stephen West MKAL project, and that was my son is dressing up as Jug Head Jones for Halloween. So in September, he started getting antsy because he knew that I was supposed to be working on it, and he was worried I wasn't going to have it done by Halloween. So in early September, I thought, I'm just going to make this hat for him. It'll be done easily by October, way, way before Halloween, and that way he won't worry. And that's what I did. I knitted the hat. It's knitted flat. It's actually knitted in just a long strip with zigzags on either end. And then when it's done, you seam it together, which I did not mind. I know there are people who seem to hate seaming. I don't hate seaming. I don't mind it at all. It's not scary to me. It's not boring. I like it. I came to knitting from hand sewing embroidery, so seaming to me just seems like bringing my different crafts together, which I like. But you know, the whole time I was working on it, I was not enjoying myself. I was telling myself, this pattern isn't going to work. The hat's going to look terrible. This is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm working on this. So I liked the yarn. It was my first time using Patton's worsted weight yarn. But I was a grim person working on this. And then I seamed it together, and it came together as this hat. And I was like, oh wait, that actually looks super fun and cool. And I put it on myself, and it looks ridiculous because I have a giant head. But still, I mean, I think I posted a picture of it to Instagram if you want to go look. And then I showed it to my son, and he was thrilled, and he's already worn it a couple times for various pre-Halloween festivities. He plans to wear it tomorrow, and he is so glad I made him this hat. I am glad I made him this hat. I apologize to the pattern, which I doubted, because this is a cool hat. Yeah, so I can't remember the name of the author of the pattern. It is a paid-for pattern. I got it on Ravelry. I think it's called the Jug Head Hat. I'll post a link to it below. But yeah, so I made this a really fun, cool object, and I made it without a single ounce of fun in my heart. That's where I was when I decided to start playing and doing the MKAL instead. So that's why doing the MKAL was a super good decision. And going back a little bit again, I'll show you another thing I've put a fair amount of work into, and I've made a big decision about it. I'm curious what some of you will say about this. So I've been working on this literally since last January. It's yarn I love. It's Wisconsin wool. I think it's Barrett's Wisconsin wool. The pattern I love and that I've made before, the classic LBD. I've been calling this my winter classic LBD because it's not a t-shirt you would want to wear in the spring or summer. It's more of a winter thing. And it's beautiful. My intention has been to embroider on it once it's done. Here's the problem. Couple problems. First of all, my measurements have changed since I started making this in January, and it is no longer the size I would want to make for myself. And it's a little frustrating to be working on something that you already know isn't going to fit you the way you want it to fit. Here's another problem. Looking at how oversized it's going to be, what I decided was, you know, the only way I'm going to be happy with this is if it's like long tunic, short dress length, and I can wear it with leggings. I think I'll be able to wear it really oversized and enjoy it that way. It's true. Have you ever tried knitting a dress out of fingering weight yarn? I've been working on it. I mean, it was, right now it's just at a knit in the round stage with no increases or decreases, super mindless. I spent a lot of time working on it. I think when I started deciding I was going to work on it again, I was about down there. I moved the stitch marker once for myself. So I worked on it a ton for like a couple months. This is how much progress I made. It's just, you know, it's fingering weight yarn. You do a whole row. It's a pretty big row, and you've added a teeny tiny amount to the length. And it's nowhere near the length I would want it to be. And once I got it to the length I wanted it to be, I would then need to do the collar, and I'd want to make elbow or 3/4 length sleeves. I've got the yarn for it. I don't have the patience. I don't think I'm going to finish this thing. And when I realized that, that made me sad. Because, like I said, I had beautiful plans, and I love the pattern, I love the yarn. And I just realized that doing this was the mark of what a beginner I am. Not because it's a pattern that was too hard for me, or yarn that was too hard to work with, or something that wouldn't look beautiful. I would have loved wearing this if I'd managed to get it done in a couple months. Where I was a beginner is that I didn't realize just how much breathtaking work essentially a dress made out of fingering weight yarn was going to be. And I didn't realize that that was not an amount of work that I was going to be willing to do. So this beautiful thing is going to be frogged. It's not the end of the world, though. It's not the end of the yarn. What I have decided is I bought some lace weight Surrey alpaca silk. It's in the mail coming to me, and I'm going to hold that. It's in gray also. I'm going to hold it double with this to make more of a DK weight yarn. And once this is frogged, I'm going to use that combination to make a DK weight something. I haven't decided exactly what yet. I'm learning how to do gauge math. It's a new skill, but I'm taking a class from Patty Lyons on it. So one thing I could do is I could still do a winter weight classic LBDT, but change the gauge to DK from fingering with fancy gauge math. And then I could make this after all, probably not a dress length, but you know, like sweater length. And I might do that and embroider on it. Or I might pick another pattern. I've been really wanting another gray cardigan. There's a gazillion different DK weight patterns out there that I could do. Not sure, but this is gonna live again, but it's not gonna live again in this form. I don't exactly regret the work I did on it because it gave me a lot of pleasure for a while at least, and it taught me something. And one of the things it taught me is that fingering weight garments are wonderful to wear. They can be wonderful to make, but be careful how much you bite off. Don't do a fingering weight dress unless you're really sure that this is a thing that you want to see through to the end. Okay, where is my next thing? Here we go. This isn't exactly a finished object, but it kind of is. I feel like it's at a finished part. You might remember I was working on a pair of socks using the Knit 2 Socks in 1 book by Sophia Talley, and I finished part of it. You can't wear this yet. This is not a pair of socks. This is a really long tube with a cuff at one end and a toe at the other. I really enjoyed making this. It was my car knitting while I was working on it. I worked on it using, you know, little 10-inch circulars, so I was just going in endless circles. A lot of fun. I like the idea of this method of making 2 socks in 1. Here's the problem with it, is when I cast off my long tube, I had this really nice sense of accomplishment, and then I put it aside and I cast on a new pair of socks, the one that I showed y'all. And here's the thing. This is still a long tube. These I plan to wear tomorrow. I'm not sure I am constitutionally also fit for steeking and adding afterthought cuffs and toes and heels to my socks. I definitely think I'm going to finish these at some point because, like I said, I'm feeling kind of short on socks. I want more wool socks. And I love the colors on this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, but I don't know when I am going to steek them and finish them. I don't know. My heart is not drawing me towards that right now. So I think mostly for me, I'm sure I will make 2-in-1 socks again, but I don't think I'm a total convert who's going to be making nothing but 2-in-1 socks. Let's put it that way. So they are kind of done, but the only person who could wear it would be like, I don't know, sort of a short stumpy snake maybe. Well, yeah. Okay. And on the subject of things like things I'm having trouble finishing, fingering weight garments, something I realized is in my next garment, I really need to have kind of an easy win. And by that, I don't necessarily mean that the pattern has to be totally basic. What I do mean is that the pattern has to be at a large enough gauge. I really want to make myself something that I can wear soon that will fit me at my current measurements. And in order for that to happen, I need to work at a large gauge where I can kind of fly through it. And I started swatching in that direction. I had mentioned before that I'm considering, well, in fact, I'm not just considering, I am going to do the Blossom by Anne Valley, that design that came out recently. I just don't know exactly when. Could be the next one, could be one that comes a little later this winter. But I bought some worsted weight Targhee yarn specifically to use for the Blossom, and I really like it. I've never worked with variegated yarn before. I'm more of a tonal gal, but this is cool. I like this. I like how it's swatched up. So I swatched at one needle size and then another needle size. I think this is the winner that I think meets the gauge of the pattern. And I like how it looks, so happy with the swatch. I did block it. So I've got a bunch of fisherman's wool that I bought when I was first starting to knit without really knowing what I was going to do with it. And I realized at some point I had enough of the white to do a whole cardigan if I held it with lace mohair and if I did a pattern at sort of an unusually large gauge. And that pattern exists. It's the Felix cardigan. It's a really popular cardigan. Lots of people make it. And I swatched for it. I actually haven't measured the gauge on this yet, and I haven't blocked it yet, so I'm not sure which needle size won, but I think one of them will work. And you know, it makes, even though it's a pretty big fabric, I feel like it would work for a sweater that I could wear, or a cardigan that I could wear this winter. My main reservation is that I was looking again at the Felix cardigan pattern, and I realized it's not really as size inclusive as I'd like. I mean, I can fit into one of the bigger sizes, but I don't remember, I don't have it in front of me exactly what it goes up to bust-wise, but I don't think it even goes as high as 60 inches. And of course, there's also ease. And really, I mean, to be size inclusive, I really feel like a pattern needs to go up to a 60-inch bust plus whatever ease they're supposed to have in that sweater. And part of me feels bad knitting something that doesn't fit those size inclusive guidelines. I don't know. Another part of me is kind of like, well, you already bought the pattern, Christina. You've got yarn for it. You kind of want to wear it. So it might be another one of those cases of accepting my own imperfections as well as other things and making it anyway. But don't you think I've got a lot of dresses that I think I could winterize with a little white mohair cardigan and have a lot of fun with it. There's another thing I might do, and I don't have a prop for this because I forgot to grab it, but I've been playing with Unspun. I don't think I've talked about this yet before on this podcast. I have a project I started this summer and then abandoned, and it was a cabled cushion cover using knitted and held double with a strand of lace mohair. I added the lace mohair, not because it was called for in the pattern, but because it was my first time knitting with Unspun, and when I tried to do the knitted and held double, it was just constantly falling apart on me. It was really a hard learning curve. I did some research. I kind of fell down the rabbit hole just this month and started reading a lot about Unspun, and I realized a few things, which was that I had bitten off a really hard project for my first Unspun project because one, Nudiden is considered to be the most delicate Unspun. It has beautiful colors. It's also often more next to skin soft than the others, but that softness also means that it's often not recommended for beginners. Like people say, try other Unspuns first and then graduate to Nudiden. And I didn't do that. Not only that I said it was a cabled cushion cover. I had never done cables before. Those were my first cables. So I started laughing at myself when I realized I was using the most fragile Unspun with my first ever cables. And I was like, well, it's maybe not shocking I didn't finish the project. I have actually been working on it a little bit more, that cushion, and it is going to get finished eventually. I'm enjoying it. It's just not my primary passion right now, but I am doing it. But reading about Unspun and knowing I don't have a huge nudiden stash, not at all, just a very small amount of nudiden. And I thought, I started reading that there are other Unspuns, including some Canadian Unspuns, Crux Fibers, and one other that I forget that I'll put below. And I Googled and I found that Crux had some white Unspun that they had available, and this other company, whose name I will share below, had some natural gray. And I ended up ordering them both because I read that they were very comfortable next to skin, but also very sturdy. And what I did is I started knitting with one strand of nudiden marled with one strand of the white and the gray. And I've just been playing with it, swatching a little bit. And then I actually started working on a pair of fingerless mitts that I think are going to my husband. The nudiden is kind of this color, and then it's marled with a dark gray, the Canadian Unspun, and it looks beautiful. I might have to make myself a pair of full mittens, not mitts, but mittens, once I finished my husband's mitts, because it's just gorgeous, and I want a pair, and they feel good. And I've really been getting the hang of knitting with Unspun, using that combo of the more delicate nudiden with the hardier Canadian Unspun. And it's giving me ambitions. Let's just put it that way. Not just for mitts, but another option that I might do in the future is I might make myself a whole sweater out of Unspun. Specifically, again, it's another one wild pattern. I told you, some people are super fans of other designers like Stephen West. I am a One Wild super fan. And they have a new pattern out called One for All. And it's nice. It's designed to be someone's, possibly their second sweater that they make. And the pattern has some really lovely illustrations and guidelines to kind of help people navigate their way through their first raglan. And I really recommend it, especially if you're someone who hasn't made a sweater before and is kind of afraid of the process, or has only made, a rectangle sweater like this one but wants to tackle something like a raglan. It's a great pattern. It is sport weight, and nudiden held double. I guess you could knit it as sport weight, but it would be super stiff. You wouldn't want to wear it as a sweater. So again, I started thinking maybe I should learn how to do some gauge math, because I'd kind of like to make a One for All, but more at a decayed, a worsted weight gauge using Unspun held double. So I'm probably going to start swatching for that right around the time I finish up my husband's sweater. I'm looking forward to it. I have a funny story to tell about it, though. I think it was last week I fell down that rabbit hole, and I started researching online how to do gauge math, how to take a pattern that's written for sport weight and change it to a different gauge. And I was finding some decent information, but it was kind of little things here and there. And then as I'm going through the tabs on my computer, I see a Patty Lyons thing, and I think, oh, that's right. And then I thought, didn't I buy a class of hers last month? And then I don't think I've taken it. So I click on it, I log in, I look, I did buy a class. I have not taken it. It's a class on gauge math. It's a class on mastering your gauge, and specifically what it eventually teaches you, I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm getting there, is it teaches you how to look at a pattern and change the gauge yourself so that you can knit whatever you want out of whatever you want. So that made me laugh that I had bought a class for the exact thing I wanted to know and then completely forgotten that I had done so. I'm about halfway through the class now. It's a good class. I can recommend it. I don't remember exactly how much it cost, but I think it was $20-some, and well worth it. I'm enjoying it, and in fact, I might work on more of that class this afternoon once this recording is done. But yeah, let's see. I think I said last time that I had a new drum carder, still do. Haven't used it a lot, mostly due to the sickness in the house. And then even after I wasn't sick anymore, I was really physically fatigued for a while. I'm just now getting to a point where the idea of standing in my cold sunroom and working on the drum carder sounds fun. I did manage, before I got sick, to scour one of my fleece, so I've got a bunch of beautiful clean fleece ready to be carded, and I am really looking forward to doing that, hoping I'm going to have time this weekend. It's just, I have made one bat with it. I made a bat using Zella's Shetland fleece, and it was thrilling. No, I'm serious. I was so excited, and I was laughing because I knew everyone I knew would laugh at me if they saw how excited I was. But it's really, I just like knowing it's there, and I'm gonna like actually using it in a sustained way even more. I know it. Another thing that I plan to do in the future is I've decided I'm going to do some sewing. Specifically, I'm going to remake a Muna and Broad pattern. They have a pattern for something called the Belmore jacket. It's like a nice oversized open jacket. I made one out of hot pink linen a couple years ago. It took me a full month. It's not that hard of a pattern, it's just that I am not a very good sewist, so it took me a full month to get the thing done, but I was so proud of it, and at the time, I didn't knit, so I didn't have any cardigans. I literally wore that thing almost every day that winter as my over jacket. It got enough wear that it needs some mending now, so that's another thing on my to-do list, is I want to mend it. It's got some issues with the pockets, and then I want to put it into my rotation of things that I throw over other things in the winter. But I also decided I want one in some fabric that I bought with the purpose of making another Belmore jacket. It's a really nice green textural fabric. It's gonna be so cool. And also I want one in my size right now. The current pink Belmore that I have was made for me when my measurements were different. So I'm gonna make a Belmore. It'll probably take me another month, maybe more, we'll see. But I'm gonna make it for my measurements right now, and I'm gonna make it out of this fabric I already have. And you know, I'm not gonna love every minute, because one thing I learned eventually is sewing is not my preferred craft. I love the product. I'm totally a product sewist. I'm not as into the process, but I don't hate the process. It's just hard. I have to be in the mood to do something hard, and I'm not always in that mood, but I'm gonna make myself be in the mood often enough that like by Christmas, I have that green Belmore jacket to wear. You heard it here. Another future plan thing, and I'm really happy about this, is writing. You know, I have been writing all along. I'm a member of a Unitarian church here in town, and on a volunteer basis, I do most of the writing for the pledge drive campaigns, and also just to recognize people who are generous with their time and volunteer efforts for our church. And so I do writing pretty regularly for that, and the fall is kind of the busy season, so I was doing quite a bit of writing for that. Wasn't doing a lot of writing just for me, but yesterday, there's a thing I've been thinking about a lot for about a month, maybe more. And yesterday it just sort of resolved in my head. And I sat down, and in the space of about an hour and a half, I wrote a 2,000-word draft of an essay about my insomnia, my PTSD, and parenting a child with autism. And all of these things kind of connect and come together, and I'm proud of the draft. It's just a draft. So my future plan is I'm going to revise the thing. My writing group is meeting this weekend, and I've sent them the copy. I'm looking forward to getting their feedback. I was also super brave. I sent a pitch to Slate magazine for the thing. Slate doesn't want to get a copy of your essay. They just want you to pitch it, and then they'll tell you if they want to see it or not. So I thought, why wait until it's done? Why not pitch it now? So I did. And then I felt super proud of myself. It'll probably go nowhere, but you don't get that kind of thing unless you try, right? And historically, I haven't tried, and I'm really happy that I tried this time. And I'm really looking forward to revising it, to making it something that I can be really proud of. And I hope someday to be sharing with you that it's published somewhere and you can go read it. That would really thrill me. Along those lines, I do have a couple other things to share before I wrap up. And one was that, it was a while ago, but you can still find it. And that is, there is a podcast called Why I Knit that I love, one of my favorite podcasts. And I was interviewed for the latest season of it. And if you go and look, you'll find Christina Socorro-Jovovich, an episode on Why I Knit. And it was really fun listening to it. I think I was interviewed back in February or March of this year. And there's a big time difference because the host is in the UK and I'm in New Mexico. So I believe we met at 5 a.m. and talked over Zoom. And I remember enjoying the conversation, but once I kind of walked away from it very quickly, I didn't remember a single thing I said. So when the episode was coming out, I was excited, but I was also like, oh boy, I hope I didn't say anything too stupid or horrible because I don't know what I said. It was 5 a.m., who knows? But I listened to it, and I'm happy to say I didn't say anything that I now consider to be stupid or horrible. In fact, I had some cool insights that I found helpful this month that I didn't remember having. Like, I said these things that I think were insightful. I hope maybe if you listen, you'll agree, and that I immediately forgot them. So thank goodness it was for a podcast and it was recorded and I got a chance to listen to it because it was kind of like getting an insight from someone else. So thank you, past Christina, for having that thought at 5 or 5:30 in the morning. I'm sorry that I immediately forgot that you said it, but glad you said it. Cool. So that was really great. It was fun. It was also another thing that was special about it was I got to see my husband and my 12-year-old son listening to the podcast together one evening after it had come out, and they were really into it. Like, my husband was listening to it on his own, but then my son very quickly was like, wait, is that Mom? And then he sat down and he started listening, and when it was over, my son kept telling me, he said, I learned a lot of things about you that was really interesting. And he just, he seemed impressed. It's kind of hard to impress your 12-year-old kid sometimes, so that was special. My husband seemed impressed too, and he is a wonderful person, and he is also a little hard to impress. So that was a special moment. Really thankful that I got to do that and that I got to have that moment with my family because of it. Also, I wrote an article for One Wild Designs, told you I was a super fan, that went out in their newsletter back in the spring. It was about a poor experience I had as a fat test knitter. And it went out in their newsletter. I think some people responded well to it, but only people who subscribed to the newsletter got to read it, so which meant most of the people I knew hadn't read it, because most people I knew, in my real life don't subscribe to that newsletter. But they recently put it up on their blog. I'll link it below. So it now has a permanent home on the internet, and that's just been cool. I got to share it with people I know. There's a couple comments on the blog, so there's a little bit of discussion, and I'm just really happy that that's out there. I really care about size inclusion and about everybody feeling able to enter the knitting world, including the world of test knitting. And I'm glad it's out there. I'm glad that it in some way is hopefully adding to the dialogue. And I'm really grateful to Jen and Bess at One Wild for publishing it, but two, they didn't just read what I had to say and publish it, but they actually sat down and made changes to their own business model based on some of the feedback I had to give. It wasn't written about them. It was someone else that I was a test knitter for where I didn't like the experience. But they decided to take my feedback as if it had been about them. And they actually made some changes to the kinds of designs that they do. And I think that's cool and amazing. One of the reasons, oh look, my cat's back there. I wondered if she'd show up at some point. That's Crookshanks. We just call her Crooks. But yeah, she's awesome. Anyway, she's exploring back there. And I just want to, like I said, you can go read it if you haven't. And I'm really happy that it's up there for the world to see. And that's it. I've wrapped up. I will definitely talk more about Unspun next time I record, and I will bring show and tell items that time. And in the meantime, please like and subscribe and comment. I'm still the tiniest of tiny little podcasts, and I don't think I show up in very many people's feeds. So if you could help the algorithm help people find my podcast, that would be cool. Because I don't like just talking to my phone. I like to feel like I'm talking to people. And right now there's 68 of you subscribed, and I'm so thankful to every one of you because I feel like I'm talking to 68 folks, and that's like more people than I normally talk to probably in the space of a month. So that's fun. But I'd love to have more people to converse with. And thank you to everyone who leaves comments. That's really fun and special for me too. I mean, part of why I started doing this was because I wanted to participate in the online knitting world, and I wanted to make a little space where I could say what I had to say. And but it's also a space where I can have conversations with other people, but I can't have those unless you comment. So thank you so much for commenting. And if you were thinking of leaving a comment but just have felt shy for whatever reason, like, oh, please go ahead and do. You'll really make my day. I'll see you again as soon as I can, hopefully in 2 or 3 weeks, but you know, I'm not going to make a specific promise this time. In the meantime, you can find me at my author website, which will be linked below, or at Instagram, which again, I will link below in the show notes. Thank you so much, and be as calm and as joyful as you can, and please vote. And I guess that's where I'll end.